Now that we had a look at the basics about Node.js, what we can do with it, and now that we even used it, let me walk you through the content of this course and explain what's in the course and where you can find what. We're almost done getting started. In the next module, I will give you a brief JavaScript refresher, just to make sure we're all on the same page regarding the core JavaScript syntax, but more importantly, about some next-gen JavaScript features which we'll use in the course. Basic JavaScript knowledge is assumed and will not be taught in that module, but if you just need a refresher, some additional information, or this next-gen JavaScript knowledge, then this is a module you should take, otherwise it's optional. Now, after this refresher, or immediately after this module, if you don't need the refresher, we'll dive into the Node.js basics, how it generally works, how we can work with streams of data, and some core Node.js modules. So really the nitty-gritty details you need to know about the language, so to say. And we'll then dive into efficiently developing with Node.js, how you can debug your code, handle errors, and so on. Now, thereafter, we'll dive into Express.js, the most popular framework you can use for Node.js. I'll explain why we use it and why we still, in its heart, use Node.js, why we still learn about Node.js even though we use Express.js. Because using it makes sense, it makes things easier. You will use it if you are working with Node.js, but still, of course, we still use Node.js with all of that. Now, thereafter, we'll dive into templating engines. That are basically some tools, you could say, that allow you to generate HTML pages on the server with dynamic content encoded in them. And that is how you can return different pages or pages with different content back to your users. So that will be an important module. Now, thereafter, we'll dive into the model view controller pattern, what that is and why we use it, and of course, how we use it. And we'll then have a look at some advanced routing concepts. Routing is something we'll also learn in the Express.js module, and we'll dive deeper into the models of the model view controller pattern. Now, after we're done with that, it's time to dive into databases. And we'll start by connecting our Node application with a SQL database, MySQL to be precise. As a next step, we'll dive deeper into that and use a package that makes working with SQL databases easier, SQLize. Now, and after having seen SQL, we'll continue with NoSQL and see how we would use that. And we'll use Mongoose there to also make working with that easier. And we'll then stick to NoSQL for the rest of the course, but you'll thoroughly learn both SQL and NoSQL. Now, after this, we'll dive into sessions and cookies, what it is, why you use it, and how you use it. We'll have a look at authentication, so how we can make sure that users can sign up and sign in with our application. We'll dive into sending emails, how that would work. How can we auto-generate emails when a user signs up, for example? We'll also dive into advanced authentication features and also authorization, which means that, for example, only a user who created a product can edit or delete it. We'll then have a look at user input validation, which is a crucial part in any web application because you want to make sure that the data your users enter into your forms is correct and valid, and you'll learn how you can do that efficiently in this module. And we'll then dive into error handling because errors will happen. For example, if the user enters wrong input. And I will show you how you can handle different kinds of errors in an elegant way. Now, thereafter, we'll dive into something important. File up and downloads. How can you handle these? How can you write code that takes incoming files, stores them, and is able to return files? I'll also show you how you can automatically generate PDF documents on the server in this module. We'll then have a look at pagination, so how we can return our data in chunks instead of all the data at once, which is not ideal for your bandwidth. We'll thereafter have a look at async request, and I'll explain what that is and how we can handle it with Node.js. And we'll then dive into payments. How can we accept payments through a service called Stripe.js? Obviously something we'll need in any shop we build. And thereafter, we'll dive into a different kind of application you can build with Node.js. We'll dive into REST APIs. And one module does not sound like a lot of content on this very important technology, but actually I got 2 modules on that, and we'll also dive into file uploads and REST APIs, authentication, pagination, and all that stuff. And additionally, these modules will build up on the entire modules before that, because you will learn that a REST API does not differ that much from a normal Node application, and I will show you in detail which knowledge you still need and how you need to change some things, not that many actually, to turn an existing application into a REST API. Now, and once we're done with that, I will dive into more modern JavaScript feature, async await, and how you can use that in your Node application. And we'll dive into WebSockets and Socket.io. This is a technology or a set of technologies that allows you to add real-time functionalities to your app. So for example, if one user sends a message and you instantly want to notify another user, you can use WebSockets for that, and I will show how that works in this module. After this module, we'll dive into a different kind of APIs. We had a look at REST APIs. We'll then have a look at GraphQL APIs. GraphQL is a very modern and popular way of building APIs. It has some advantages over REST APIs, also some disadvantages, and I will dive into GraphQL and how it differs from REST APIs in this module, and I will show you how to build a GraphQL API from scratch with Node.js. And this will be quite a big module, even though it's only one block on this slide. Now, thereafter, we'll have a look at deployment. How can you take your application you built, all your Node code you built, how can you take that and move it to a real server in the web and ensure that it runs there? This will be shown there. There, I'll also dive into things like setting up SSL encryption. And once we're done with that, I'll have a short module on Node.js functionalities beyond creating web servers with it, because you can use it for other things too, as I will mention there. And then I also got a couple of bonus modules, which I actually added after this course was initially released, because I'm keeping this course updated. And I added sections on Node.js with TypeScript, and also sections on Deno, which is a Node.js alternative by the original creator of Node. And whilst Node is of course the big important JavaScript runtime which is there to stay, Deno could be a nice alternative you also might want to look into. And therefore I got some introductory modules at the end of this course as well. Well, and thereafter, we're going to conclude this with a roundup and with some possible next steps you could take. And therefore, I'd say this course is packed with content. Let's conclude this first getting started module and let's dive in.